Okay, let's continue our coverage of the war and the hope for peace and bring in Gershon Baskin. He's a former peace negotiator and was involved with hostage negotiations with Hamas in the Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange of 2011. He is currently in discussions with members of Hamas from the prisoner exchange regarding the current situation unfolding both in Israel and in Gaza. He's joining us from Jerusalem. Sir, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.
Sir, my understanding is that from your contacts in 2011 within Hamas, you're still in touch with them about what's happening today. Is there anything you can share about those conversations and the current condition of those hostages?
I can share that it seems to me that Hamas is beginning to understand the severity of their situation. That was not the case in the last days when they were celebrating their so-called successes. It seems to me that they are beginning to understand that their end is coming. And that's a dangerous situation because it leads to desperation. What I've heard from them is the kind of talk that makes very little sense to our ears, talks of heroism and talks of fighting to the death, of saving Palestine, etc. It's very sad to see how detached they are from reality and how much Hamas has set the Palestinian cause back 75 years. It's a tragedy that's happened to the Israelis who were brutally murdered and kidnapped by Hamas, and it's a tragedy to the millions of Palestinians in Gaza who are going to suffer so much because of Hamas leadership.
Sir, when you said that the people you're speaking to in Hamas have a sense that their end is coming, could I ask you to clarify, do those individuals think that they're going to die in the fighting or that the actual entity Hamas is about to be annihilated?
I think they're probably both. What they've said to me is we are going to fight to death. We're not afraid to die, we're going to fight to death. When I offer them alternatives, such as saving their dignity and saving their humanity by releasing unilaterally women and children and elderly and sick people, infants, they say no. And this is tragic. Tragic
Why?
That they won't.
Why did they say no?
Why? Because they said, we want our prisoners freed. We have 8,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israel. We've been living under occupation for all these years. For 75 years, we've had our dignity, our lives taken from us by Israel. We are not willing to accept it anymore. So they did what they did without acknowledging or thinking about the consequences of their actions. I don't think that everything happened was planned or under their control, but I think the brutality and the lack of humanity that they showed makes them unfit to be the rulers of a country next to Israel or anywhere.
And the work that you're doing, the conversations you're having with them, is this just because you have a personal vested interest and you've got contacts, or is someone asking you to do this, or families or the government asking you to do this?
I'm getting phone calls from families of hostages all the time asking me for help and advice. And I am working back channels as much as I know how to do that. I've been working back channels for 45 years with Palestinians and people in the Arab world. And we're talking to people all over the region, including in Qatar and Egypt and in Turkey, as well as a lot of Palestinians in Gaza who are begging for help. I was contacted by Palestinians in Gaza who live in the north of Gaza who were told to evacuate, and then told me that Hamas put up checkpoints and won't let them leave the area. I was contacted today by Palestinians in Gaza who want to escape to Egypt, and spoke to the Egyptian intelligence who told me that Israel is threatening to shoot anyone who comes close to the border. I'm verifying that information. I don't believe it's true, but we're trying to open up an Israeli agreement to let people vacate if they want to. What I understand is that Hamas is not allowing people to go to the Rafah border crossing from Gaza to Egypt. Right now, there are 500,000 Palestinians in Gaza who have already lost their homes. A lot of them were hiding out in the United Nations schools, and I understand the United Nations has told them all to vacate the premises of those schools. It's a desperate situation for them. We in Israel are suffering the biggest trauma in our history from the attack on Israel, which our government is responsible for for its policies over the years and for its lack of ability to protect us and for the tremendous failure of intelligence. But nonetheless, the Israeli army is now ready to act. It is acting, it is bombing Gaza, and a ground operation, I believe, will begin in the not too distant future with the aim of getting rid of Hamas, even at the cost of reoccupying Gaza, which has been a slogan for the last 18 years, and now it's gone beyond being a slogan to being something real.
Even at
My
the
heart
risk.
goes out.
Sorry, please go
My
ahead,
heart
sir.
goes out. Yeah, my heart goes out to all the people of Gaza, many of them who don't like Hamas, many of them who are victims of this conflict for 75 years and have suffered so many times. And my heart goes out to every Israeli. Every Israeli, we have friends who were kidnapped or killed. I'm getting phone calls from people. I have a good friend whose 12 of his relatives were kidnapped, a good friend who's a very well-known peace activist, Vivian Silver from Kibbutz
Yes.
Be'eri, who I know for more than 30 years, and we're good friends. We've worked together a lot, who's kidnapped. I've seen the pictures of the horrific scenes in the communities around the Gaza Strip in Israel. This is a disaster for us all. If you allow me, I would like to give one light of hope on this whole
Please,
thing.
please.
I call it the Belfast moment, the moment when we all, the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, wake up and say no more. We don't want to kill each other anymore. We're tired of dying. We want to sit down together and learn to live together. And this is not relevant to our governments, because our governments are wrong and bad and need to be replaced. Our government and the Palestinian governments, this needs to come from the people. And maybe after this trauma and this disaster and this horror and the death and destruction, maybe enough Israelis and enough Palestinians will stand up and say, enough, enough, enough.
Gershon Baskin, thank you so much for your time today, sir.
You're welcome.